Hey everyone, and welcome to the DarkCast. I'm your host, Jonathan Miley. The DarkCast is usually a bi-weekly discussion celebrating and critiquing video games. The show is divided into multiple conversations between myself and the various writers here on DarkStation.com. Recently, I had a chance to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla as part of Ubisoft Forward, the program that they're doing in lieu of E3 2020 this year. So I got to play the game, and afterwards I sat down and chatted with Joel Zerlip and Alan Kessinger about my time with the game. If you want to find out more information about the game, including my written preview, then check out the notes below on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, then please enjoy the footage of me playing the game. I didn't do very well, but whatever. You can also find that written preview on DarkStation.com. There you can also find the DarkCast Interviews podcast, as well as other video game reviews, previews, and features. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at DarkStation_com, check us out on YouTube, and email us at podcast@DarkStation.com. As always, thank you so much for listening. Now on with the show. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the DarkCast. I'm Jonathan Miley. Joining me for this segment today, I don't know what this is Joel Zerlip.
Hey.
And Alan Kessinger.
Hey, long time no see.
Right? Yeah. We breaking internet illusion, we literally just recorded the Watch Dogs episode, so if you're listening to this before, then you're time traveling.
Can we make that into a Friends title, like the one where they talk about Watch Dogs or something?
Absolutely.
I forget
we can totally do that.
Okay, cool. All right.
That was a Friends thing. You were okay, so recently I got to play a couple of games from Ubisoft as part of their Ubisoft Forward event that they were doing in lieu of E3 2020 because, you know, the world's on fire and people are dying all over the place. But mainly in America because we're the ones that don't know how to quarantine because we're
Americans.
Stupid.
Yep.
Anyway, so I got to play Watch Dogs Legion. I got chastised last episode for not saying the subtitle, but I also got to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is the game that we're going to talk about right now. So before we get started, I'm sure there are plenty of people that want this game to be like the next big, crazy different Assassin's Creed game. Because Assassin's Creed changes pretty drastically every so often. Mm-hmm. This is not that game. My thoughts were, like, okay, it's really similar to Odyssey. What do I say besides, it's really similar to Odyssey? But if you look back at the Assassin's Creed games, a lot of them come in, like, groups of threes. Mm-hmm. So you've got the Ezio trilogy, which are almost, like, infamously similar. And then you have Assassin's Creed 3, Black Flag, and Rogue. And so now you've got Valhalla, which, you know, before that came Origins and Odyssey, which I'm really kind of bummed that this game doesn't have an O in it, like Odin's Beard or Odin's Wrath, or I don't know what it would be called, but I kind of wish this was the O trilogy. Oh. But anyway... So in a lot of ways, like, this game is to Odyssey what Black Flag was to Assassin's Creed 3. Like, you could reductively say, but also truthfully say, that Black Flag is just Assassin's Creed 3 with pirates. And to the same degree, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is just Assassin's Creed Odyssey with Vikings. That is not an untrue statement, but the game has evolved, it has changed in the way that Assassin's Creed sequels do. So to get that out of the way, like, this is not some big game changer. This is another Assassin's Creed game. And you know what? I'm here for it. I loved the hell out of the hours that I played of it. So another thing that I want to say, and I really want this to catch on, okay, guys? So when you start the game, you get to pick whether you're a male or female character. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you chose between Cassandra and Alexios, whoever you chose would then be the sibling that dies at the beginning of the game. Spoiler alert for a game that's like 2 years old. I'm sorry. But your sibling would die at the beginning of the game, and so it did kind of change the story a little bit. In Valhalla, you play as a character named Ivor or Ivor. They pronounce it kind of different ways, but it's Eivor, and that's both male and female. It doesn't matter. There's no Cassandra to Alexios. It's just Ivor, whether it's a guy or a girl. So being the Cassandra fan that I am, I chose female Ivor, and as I was playing, I came up with how we can distinguish these characters. And so from henceforth, I'm going to call the female version of Ivor Femvor, and I'm going to call the male version of Ivor Guyvor. So let's go. What are your questions about Femvor and Guyvor?
So actually one of the things you mentioned the Alexios and Cassandra, the difference between those two. Do characters react to her in some sort of like feminine way, or is it just the same dialogue for both of them?
I think it's the same dialogue. People either called me Ivor or they called me Wolf-Kissed.
Hey, you.
No. So I guess Wolf-Kissed is, the eagle bearer kind of moniker. Yeah. So yeah, there did not seem to be any distinction between the way that people talked with
That's
me.
kind of a way to get around that. That makes sense. So I'm very curious because I would think the combat would be probably the biggest place they could change up between where they were in Origins and Odyssey, and now as Northern. Has that changed?
Actually, I could see Valhalla like playing the same as Odyssey. I mean, just that sort of like overly aggressive, like Spartan style of combat.
Fair.
So it's interesting that you bring up the word Spartan there, because one of the abilities in Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the Spartan Kick. And it has returned as the Kick of Tyr. And there was also an ability called multi-shot, where you could like use your bow and arrow to tag multiple people and then fire, like 5 arrows at a time. That is returned also, called the Mark of Death. So there are some abilities that are like just straight up from Odyssey in this game. Combat does feel very similar to Odyssey. The biggest differences are that, like Origins, you can have a shield again. But one of the changes that you can have is you can dual wield weapons. So basically you can put any weapon in your left hand. So for a while I was dual wielding axes. For most of the game though, I forgot about it and just had a shield in my left hand and an axe in my right hand. So if you have your shield, you can both parry attacks and block. But if you're dual wielding axes, then you can no longer block, but you can still parry. Otherwise, combat feels very similar. There's a light and heavy attack. Your 4 face buttons correspond to 4 different powerful melee attacks that use up adrenaline or whatever the yellow meter is. And you have also 4, special attacks to map to your ranged attacks as well.
This is more of a world building / putting this game in its place of Assassin's Creed history. So looking it up, I see that Valhalla is supposed to take place in the year 873, and the first Assassin's Creed is 1191. So could you tell in your playthrough at all, or maybe did somebody say anything to the effect that like there's going to be like are we starting to see the bridge between these kind of new Assassin's Creed experiences with the old ones? I'm just curious to see if we're going to finally start seeing those connections as to, like, again, because theoretically, with Origins and Odyssey and now Valhalla, like, there's got to be some sort of lead in to, because we're bumping awfully close to the beginning of the standardization of the assassins, as far as like the wristblade and the robes and nothing is true, everything is permitted, that sort of thing. And that stuff, without like any hint of irony, like that whole part of that franchise has always fascinated me. That's why I liked Origins so much, because you kind of see the quote unquote origins of, like, where the Assassin's Creed symbol comes from, or where the wristblade comes from. And I'm, as someone who is interested in that, did you get the sense that any of that material is going to be there?
I'm sorry, Alan, but I got no sense of that whatsoever. Most of the world building that I saw was specifically about the Danes and the Vikings, and the Saxons, and there was no mention of assassin-y stuff at all. Ivor already had her hidden blade, so I was able to assassinate people and stuff like that.
Is that because you got dropped into the middle, Jonathan, or is
yes.
it because?
So yeah, once again, I didn't even play like a prologue section like I did with Watch Dogs. This literally just started me outside of a castle on a mission to save or actually avenge the death of a guy named King Oswald. Okay. I played through, I think, 3 main missions. One was basically King Oswald is dead, so you have to go avenge his death, and I needed people to be my army to do that. So I went up to the sheriff of a local town and tried to get him to join with me, and he said no. And I told him that I could take care of his local bandit problem for him, and he said yes. So I went to a little castle.
Part of the deal.
Right? Yeah. So I went to a little castle, and I assassinated a bunch of people. One of the gameplay mechanics of the game is that you can, because this is, this is England, and this is, like 800 or 900 or whenever it is, there's a bunch of waterways and rivers, canals and creeks and stuff like that. And so you do have access to your longboat ships, and you can, sail around. And so I left his town on my boat and basically went up the river to a place called Kingsbury. And I was able to start an assault with my giant horn and, basically have my guys from my boat join me in attacking this small little castle building.
Are there sea shanties?
Yes, but okay. They're not classic sea shanties.
Right,
There's actually like somebody on your boat with like a lyre or something, and so it's not even just like a bunch of people singing. It seemed like there's one person on your boat that sings, and they have musical accompaniment. So after I cleared out that encampment, I was able to then go and attack the castle that where Rued, who is a rogue Danish Viking somebody, that's where he was located. And so I took an army of longboats and attacked his castle, and I think that mission represented the new raids that you can do as a Viking. And that seemed really, really cool, because I saw some raids on the map, but I wasn't able to do more of them. And I'm hoping, I think these raids kind of take the place of the big battles from Odyssey. And I really didn't like the Odyssey battles.
Yeah.
I did the ones that were required for the story, but like, you're just kind of standing there in an open field killing a bunch of grunts until a captain appears, and then you kill him. And then, eventually you kill more people than whoever the other side is, and you win. But with these castle raids, there's kind of a momentum. So it kind of reminded me of like Lord of the Rings with the orcs going at Helm's Deep with the big ram bar. to try to get through the door. So basically, you have a group of Vikings that have a ram bar on wheels, and they're trying to, go into deeper and deeper layers of the castle, and you have a bunch of people that are just jumping off of the castle walls or the battlements or whatever. And you've got archers up there, so you're trying to protect your ram bar, but you can also go up to it and assist with it and break through the door. And then this particular one ended with a boss battle, which I would assume these kind of end with boss battles, where I discovered that King Oswald was actually not dead. He was just captured. And so I killed the guy that captured him, and then it was time to have King Oswald marry a Danish princess lady. And so then the next mission was just a wedding, and it honestly felt like something straight out of The Witcher 3. And it was a really great little mission, and I loved it. After that, it was just open world exploration, and I fought a couple of bosses. They were called, I think, Daughters of Lyrion or something like that. And they had, it was these witch, undead kind of creatures that had elemental powers and stuff like that. And actually, I really enjoyed the boss battles. Both of them required 2 tries from me. They were pretty difficult, but they didn't feel overly spongy like a lot of the big enemies in Odyssey
100%,
can.
Yeah.
They required a lot of dodging, they required a lot of blocking, and they required timely use of my abilities. But overall, they were difficult, but they weren't crazy, and like I said, they didn't feel super spongy. So I really enjoyed those. Otherwise, I don't know, I just kind of went around and did some random stuff. There are cairn stacking little mini games that you can do. So at predetermined places in the world, you can find basically a pile of rocks and stack them on top of each other and build little cairns. And it's a really simple little mini game. I assume they'll get more difficult, but it actually seemed kind of peaceful, and you get a ability point after you do one, and I don't know, it's kind of nice. In one of the towns, I participated in a thing called flighting, which is apparently an ancient back and forth of insults to rhyme and verse. And so it felt like this bizarre version of epic rap battles of history. And I don't know, it has the potential to be really hilarious. It could also be super lame.
Are there haystacks?
Yes, and you can hide in haystacks once again. So in Odyssey, when you would dive into a haystack, you would just automatically pop out. You couldn't actually hide.
That's
in a
right.
haystack.
Why would you do that?
Because you're not an assassin. I assume. I assume that's the reasoning. I don't actually know.
Is there anything that really stood out that was a step forward, or are we just in for more Odyssey with Vikings? And I don't mean that pedantically. I really do mean that. Odyssey was one of the best generation in my opinion. That's not a bad thing. I'm just, what did it, besides maybe settlements, that's something that you haven't seen, was what you saw just really a reskinned kind of next version of Odyssey?
In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, there were little things that were cool that they added. So when you're on horseback, you can do a cinematic mode, very similar to Red Dead Redemption 2, and the camera just kind of moves around as you run across the world. You can automate your boat and follow the coast or follow the river instead of having to manually steer and stuff like that. Well, any other thoughts?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have much. I want to play this game. Given how similar it is, I really don't have anything else. How about you, Alan?
For better, for worse, I will always play through the series because I consider it my series. But whether I'm physically ready to play another 60, 70 hours of what was possibly Odyssey, I don't know.
Jonathan, I guess that would be where I'd finish this off is how did you come out of it? Where are you at headwise? So you've kind of been on and off with the series. Where are you? Are you ready to jump back into a maybe 80-hour
Assassin's
Creed game?
When you put it in that context, like, no, I'm not ready.
Okay,
at all.
ready is not
But
the
at
right
the same
word.
time,
Are you going to go jump in? Like, did this make you want?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it did. Absolutely. I was excited about Valhalla going into this because Odyssey is my favorite game in the series since like Black Flag, probably, easily, in fact. And so, like, I was excited about Odyssey with Vikings. Like, absolutely. I love Norse mythology and Vikings, and you put that with Odyssey and you give them a hidden blade, then just, yeah, that sounds fantastic. Coming out of it, I'm still super excited. I was expecting this to be, Origins 3 or whatever. And, that's kind of what it is, and I'm totally fine with that. Just like Watch Dogs, nobody mentioned anything about a release date. I assume that will be talked about at the Ubisoft Forward event, which this podcast will be coming out after that, so we should all know if there's a release date announced by now or not. Who knows? Well, that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can find more information about the game, including my written preview, below in the links on YouTube or in the show notes for this episode on darkstation.com. There you can also find the DarkCast Interviews podcast, as well as other video game reviews, previews, and features. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at darkstation_com, find us on Facebook, check us out on YouTube, and email us at podcast@darkstation.com. For Alan Kessinger and Joel Zerlip, I'm Jonathan Miley. Thanks again, and until next time, be safe out there, be good to one another, and have a good one.